On today's show, for head coach Spencer Carbery, the Capitals' success will depend on their ability to score goals.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, including the SiriusXM app and on YouTube. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minute Cast, available wherever you find your podcasts. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And the best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about the Capitals' need to score goals. That was one of their biggest deficiencies this last season, was just simple things. Finding the back of the net, the off-season acquisitions. How much better will the Capitals be in the goal-scoring front? We'll talk about that. A little bit later, we'll talk about challenges facing Spencer Carbery as he does do just that. Try to get this team to score goals on a regular basis. A little bit later, we'll talk about even Miroshnichenko's goals. Listen, a couple episodes ago, I said what my goals are for even. Spencer Carbery has said his goals for himself, but what goals has Miro set for himself? We'll talk about that. And then in the final segment, we'll talk about Vincent Iorio and what to expect from him this coming season. But just to get it going here, as the Capitals training camp, the official start is getting closer and closer. Spencer Carbery, in an interview with Tom Gliddy, spoke about the big needs for improvement for this Capitals team that obviously, and I know I'm not saying anything too novel, that for the Capitals to be successful, they need to find the back of the net. How is he going to get that done? Will it be Pierre-Luc Dubois playing on that top line with Ovechkin and Wilson? What is Spencer Carbery's outlook for this team? It is going to be interesting. The Washington Capitals 23-24 recap and outlook. The Capitals are aiming to bounce back from a disappointing 23-24 season during which they barely secured a playoff spot and were swiftly eliminated by the Rangers. To enhance their performance, the team has made significant changes by adding 7 new players to their NHL roster through trades and free agency. And one of the things I'm going to go ahead and say is that former GM Brian McClellan, BMAC, he was super aggressive this past summer here, making some big acquisitions either through trade or free agency. And at least on paper, I think the Capitals are in a lot better position. You see that Pierre-Luc Dubois is looking for a bounce-back season. Andrew Mangiapane, he is going to try to find his former glory. And Jakob Chychrun, that defenseman with an offensive flair. That's why I say, at least on paper, this team looks a whole lot better. Talking about Coach Carbery's focus and challenges, the responsibility of integrating these new players into the team falls on second-year coach Spencer Carbery. Carbery emphasized 2 main areas of focus for the team's success in a recent discussion with NHL.com's Tom Gliddy. Firstly, he acknowledged that the team won't catch anyone off guard this season and emphasized the importance of readiness in facing opponents. Secondly, he highlighted the need for improvement in various aspects, particularly on the offensive front. Go ahead and underline that in your mind, as that's what they're going to have to do. The power play that struggled at points this last season, that historically the Capitals have been a pretty good offensive team, that this last season was a bit of a one-off. A lot of that could be drawn to Alex Ovechkin getting off to a slow start. But if you take a look at the teams that do it really well. They're not reliant on one singular player. I point to the Rangers, as that was glaringly apparent in the first round match against the Capitals, that they had scoring up and down their lineup. I think that the Capitals will be better suited to take on bigger opponents next season by scoring goals up and down the lineup. The 23-24 season performance challenges under rookie head coach Carbery last year, the Capitals struggled early on to adapt to new strategies and face challenges with inconsistent goaltending and difficulties in generating offense. And this is one of the things that I've spoke of on the show, is that I know that Darcy Kuemper gets a bad rap because, he played poorly, according to a lot of people. But was that actuality, as he was the netminder when Spencer Carbery first joined this team, and the Capitals team as a whole weren't used to his system. So inevitably, I think that Darcy Kuemper was hung out to dry at times. And, you take a look at the Capitals, they dropped down the standings. So they did whatever it took to get wins. And what they did was put Charlie Lindgren in net. He took hold of those reins and never let go. I guess not to be a revisionist, but that is just the way things are. This upcoming season, Logan Thompson and Charlie Lindgren will carry the bulk of the mail for the team. Offensive struggles and team performance. Even though Alex Ovechkin managed to reach the 30-goal mark, the team encountered broader issues, finishing with the worst goal differential among playoff teams in the salary cap era. Their offensive struggles were evident as they ranked poorly in goals per game and 5-on-5 goals. Furthermore, the team faced difficulties with their power play, enduring a month-long scoring drought and performing poorly in the playoffs. That was one of the things that was especially difficult for me, is that I was pumping my fist at, yes, the Capitals made it to the playoffs, but the bad news is, well, they got swept and were setting up tea time a whole lot sooner than I think any of us had hoped for. But there are areas of improvement. We know that. And I think that a lot of that will be improved through the new additions to the team, at least ostensibly. The Capitals also lacked offensive contributions from their defensemen, with only one player surpassing 25 points. The upcoming season brings hope for improvement with the addition of players like Pierre-Luc Dubois, Andrew Mangiapane, and Jakob Chychrun, who are expected to bolster the team's performance. Again, if you are an everydayer of the show, I talk about how Brian McClellan said in a summer presser that these were risky moves. And these risky moves, I'm talking the Pierre-Luc Dubois 7-year deal, that the Capitals didn't have to give up a whole lot to obtain those players. The players that were subtracted from this team, I don't really feel too bad about. It could have been far worse. I think the Capitals could have shot for the stars and tried to acquire Jake Gensel, Mark Giseau, Stamkos, some of these kind of players, but they would have had to give up a whole lot more in return. So it's a difficult position for the team to try to stay relevant, to try to rebuild on the fly. Retool is a word I hear used quite often in this Alex Ovechkin era. He only has this coming season and the following season under contract. This is not a time to tinker with the lineup. You take a look at the Nationals in particular. They've kind of wandered out in the wilderness since 2019, 2020, and they're just really starting to come out of the woods now in the 23-24 season. So let that be a lesson to the Capitals, and I know that that's not a rubber stamp carbon copy thing, as you take a look at the Rangers, who went through a rebuild a few seasons ago, and they sent a letter out to their season ticket holders and said, kind of hold on to your seats. It's going to be rough here for a while. But for the Capitals, they were able to get these big name players without having to give up a bunch of prospects. As we heard about, the Jets were interested in Connor McMichael, a trade for Rutger McGroarty, who he was a huge piece, is a huge piece on this team. And I'm glad that they didn't have to part ways with him. That would have been a difficult pill to swallow. Coach Carbery's preparation for the upcoming season, with the upcoming training camp and preseason games, Coach Carbery is eager to implement a clear plan and direction, ensuring the new roster aligns with the team's identity and playing style from the outset. That is going to be key for this team, is what they learned last season they haven't forgotten about, and teaching that to these new players about how to be successful as a Capitals player. Because when you take a look at it, I think that Spencer Carbery is the right guy, the right coach at the right time. It's just getting these players on board with their system. As this team transitions to being a younger team, I think that a voice of a younger head coach, a younger-ish head coach, I think is a little bit easier to listen to than some gruff old head coach. I guess I'm talking about like Peter Laviolette. All right, so talking about goals, even Miroshnichenko, in a previous episode, I spoke about how many goals I expect for him to get. Spencer Carbery said how many he thinks he should get. But what does the man himself, what does Miro think he's going to score this upcoming season? I'll discuss straight ahead. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Thank you for making Locked On Capitals your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NHL podcast. Locked On NHL provides you with a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day, with national experts and local insight on every team in the league. Available on YouTube or wherever you find your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You'll have to excuse me as we're making this transition into the fall. What comes along with that is the cold season. And well, if you can tell by my voice, I'm dealing with a cold, and bear with me as I make my way through this podcast. I feel all pretty good, all things considered, a bit of a stuffy nose, but it is getting to be a cold season, which is something I guess I think we all don't like. But next, talking about here, even Miroshnichenko, he is a guy, of course, that the Capitals have high hopes for, that he is going to be that goal-scoring fuel in years to come. And one of the things that Spencer Carbery had spoke about is they have lofty expectations for Miro. They don't want him to be a third or fourth liner. The reason they drafted him in the first place is the ability to score goals. On paper, he has the potential of being a really great goal scorer. So as we take a look at Miro, I've talked about, what I think he's going to achieve this upcoming season, but what does even Miroshnichenko think himself? Miro, a highly touted young player for the Caps, has been creating quite a buzz with his exceptional skills and charismatic personality, often drawing comparisons to his hockey idol, Alex Ovechkin. His remarkable performance at the NHLPA Rookie Showcase at MedStar Ice Complex showcased not only his on-ice prowess, but also his jovial nature. When asked about his goals for the upcoming season, Miro lightheartedly joked about scoring an astounding 100 or even 500 goals. And I think that's just his personality coming out as, oftentimes I think that these players like Alex Ovechkin, if you're known as being a goal scorer, they're going to constantly hound you with how many goals. So he had a lighthearted moment there and said, I don't know, 100 or 500. But then he gave a more realistic estimate of around 20 goals. And I think he is selling himself short. My projections for him are 20 to 30 goals plus. I think the potential is there. We saw Miro grow by leaps and bounds in the postseason for the Hershey Bears and the Calder Cup push and subsequent wins. So you take a look at it, I think he's going to be that key piece in years to come. What to expect from Miro this upcoming season? He's going to have his work cut out for him. As you take a look at the line combinations, not too many people have him penciled in as making the opening night roster. So I'm not going to say it's impossible. If we saw what Alexei Protas did a few years ago, where there was no grand plans of him joining this team, he just played so well that he fought his way onto this team. Could Miro do that? Definitely, but he's going to have his work cut out. But a really fun story to watch is he is a guy that has had to overcome obstacles one after one. We're talking the Hodgkin's lymphoma. We're talking about the recovery process from that, terminating his KHL contract, and then playing for the big team, the Capitals. But what does head coach Spencer Carbery think? The Capitals head coach Carbery has expressed high hopes for Miro, envisioning him as a well-rounded player capable of scoring 25 to 30 goals in the NHL. Carbery emphasized the importance of providing the young Russian talent ample ice time to foster his confidence and elevate his performance to the desired level. And one of the things I'll say is, as much as I'm pushing for him to be on the big team, the Capitals, if it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case, or he's going to be a healthy scratch on any given night, he would be best served playing down in Hershey, where he can grow his game more and get more ice time. A bitter pill to swallow, but you know that he is going to be one of the first call-ups if there's an injury or some lackluster play out on the ice. Performance for the Bears during his time with the Bears, particularly in the Calder Cup playoffs, Miro's demonstrated his scoring prowess by netting an impressive 7 goals in 20 AHL postseason games. His transition to North American style of play was notable, supported by team captain Alex Ovechkin, who played a pivotal role on and off the ice in helping Miro adapt to his new environment. And you know, a great story as well. A guy that is going to be 39 here soon, a fellow countryman, a Russian, and having the opportunity to play with another young Russian, kind of a cool moment and kind of looking into the future. As you are seeing Alex Ovechkin kind of on the back nine of his hockey career. I'm not trying to sell him short, but you're starting to see a glimpse into the future. Talking about future anticipation as the rookie camp and training camp draw near, Miro eagerly anticipates the opportunity to showcase his capabilities to the Caps coaching staff, further solidifying his status as a burgeoning talent both on and off the ice. And that's our hope. That's our prayer for even Miroshnichenko, is that he can take more steps. I've spoke about this on the show before. We take a look at Henrik Slop here, Connor McMichael, Beck Malenstein when he was on this team, that those players went into the Calder Cup playoffs the last couple of years here. They went in as boys and left as men. I think that Miro really worked on his 200-foot game. I think that he is more acclimated to the North American game. That's why I'm not counting him out. I'm going to say it's going to be difficult, of course, for him to find a spot on the roster, but stranger things have happened. There are still a lot of questions out there. Jacob Vrana, for example, on a PTO, is he going to make the team? The Capitals need to see a whole lot more from Sonny Milano, who at points was hot and cold. Duhaime and Radish, players that were, you know, depth moves kind of in a lot of ways. Third and fourth liners that, hey, they might be a good thing or they might be a bust. We really don't know. It's a good thing that they have options down in Hershey, like even Miroshnichenko, like Pierre-Luc Dubois, Ethan Frank, those kind of players that, again, I've talked about this. This camp is going to be one to remember. Mark it down. So talking about other players that are looking to grow their game, take it to the next level, is Vincent Iorio. Is this going to be the season that he cracks the Capitals roster, or will he spend another season in Hershey? I'll discuss straight ahead. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And one of the things that's frustrating for me is that when my favorite band or artist or comedian or sports team is playing, I can't find tickets. And it can be frustrating. There are a lot of different options out there, but to take the guesswork out of it, that is why you need Game Time. So do that. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the blue line is a bit interesting as it is sketched out, the D pairings, and I had hopes that I would see Alex Alexiev out there. When I drew up my D pairings, I did not include him just based on the additions of Roy and Chychrun on this team. Not to say it's impossible for them to join the team, but another player that is kind of always perennially looking for a big break is Vincent Iorio, one of the Capitals' top prospects. I do expect to see him find a role on the Capitals in years to come, or say for some reason there is not a spot for him, or the Capitals just view him as a bust, which I don't think is going to be the case. They could always trade him. But Vincent Iorio is one heck of a defenseman playing down in Hershey. Sample sizes up on the big team, the Capitals, but if I'm going to generalize his time playing hockey, professional hockey, I would say injuries, summarize and kind of, if you could generalize his time playing professional hockey, is that I think sometimes he's ready to take it to the next level, but then it's always hampered by injuries. Let's talk about him and where he's from. If you're not too familiar with Vincent Iorio, NHL Draft 2021, Vincent Iorio, a defenseman, was selected with the number 55 pick in the 2021 NHL Draft. And it's been something, the blue line, that's been a work in progress. I know that Chychrun and Matt Roy definitely changed the face of the blue line because, let's face it, John Carlson can't continue to routinely play 25 to 30 minutes a night. So Matt Roy, I think, is a guy that's going to alleviate a lot of that pressure on John Carlson, number 74. And I think you take a look at Chychrun, I think that he is going to bring some offense. Carlson can score goals, but so can Chychrun. I think it gives the Capitals more of a well-rounded look. But talking about NHL and AHL performance during the 23-24 season, he played 6 games for the Caps in the NHL, recording no points. In the AHL, he played 60 games for the Bears, scoring 4 goals and assisting on 10 others for a total of 14 points. So a work in progress for this guy, kind of pulling for him. I think that at one time, I think the Capitals were really hot on him, just like Chesley as well. There is this new group of young blue liners that are kind of in the works, Chase Prisky, those kind of things that you don't know, kind of like the net minding. We don't know. There's great options, but are they NHL bound? Are they Capital bound? Or should we view them as assets that could potentially be flipped at some point? Talking about performance improvement, despite a slow start to the season, Iorio's performance improved as the season progressed. He was called up to the Caps due to injuries late in the season, helping the team qualify for the playoffs. And what do we know? Well, he got injured. And, sometimes just like TJ Oshie and a lot of these other players, obviously it's not always their fault. It is a physical game. And if you're playing a physical game, the chances of you getting injured are a lot higher than if you're playing another sport out there. His time with the Hershey Bears was marked by growth and resilience. Although he missed the beginning of the Calder Cup playoffs due to injury, he returned to play in the second round, the Eastern Conference Finals, and the final games of the playoffs. So you take a look at it. I was hoping that, when he did not, when the Capitals were eliminated, he would go down and jump right in. He returned to play in the second round. That's what was important, right? So that injury, even when he was on the Capitals and he got injured, I was thinking to myself, is he going to miss a lot of time here? We didn't see him again during the playoffs, which, of course, the Capitals got swept. But continuing to work on his game, that is what we're hoping for, whether it be on the Capitals or the Bears, a work in progress. Continued injury issues. Injuries continued to plague him and other defensemen on both the Capitals and Bears. Following the Capitals' elimination from the playoffs, Iorio returned to Hershey to rehabilitate and practice before being loaned back to the Bears on May 22nd. He played in all 7 games of the Eastern Conference Finals, but not score any points. He sustained an injury in Game 7, causing him to miss the Calder Cup Final Series against the Coachella Valley Firebirds. So, he is one of those guys that we've heard about for a long time, kind of like Lucas Johansson and a lot of these other players. It's going to be their year this year, next year, It's never their year. And I know that it's not the same thing for Vincent Iorio, but I'm hoping that at some point he'll find a spot on the team. You take a look at it. Jensen is now on the Senators. TVR was kind of one of the guys that I had circled for being on the way out, and injuries. Injuries are always something that you can't anticipate. You can anticipate them, but you don't know when they're going to rear their ugly head. And if we remember John Carlson taking that puck off his head there and missing a substantial amount of time against the Jets, that sometimes these things are more major than they look like. And look at how the Capitals struggled in that regard. So it's good that the Capitals have a lot of flexibility. They have a lot of depth on the blue line. And Vincent Iorio is another guy, if healthy, I think is going to be one of the first call-ups. So I think that the future is bright for Vincent Iorio. It's just kind of biding your time and waiting for the right moment. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals and making it your first listen of the day. Now go check out the Locked On NHL podcast, where the season never ends, providing national expertise with a local perspective. You can find the link to the Locked On NHL in the description, so you don't have to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.